Welcome to Leapcast. I'm your host, Dr. George James. Leap stands for leaders, entertainers, athletes, and performers. And I'm on a journey to connect with high achievers and highlight their unexamined human moments. Tune in to learn how these high-achieving Leap individuals were able to reach their greatest potential, face their most difficult challenges, and embrace the human moments that helped them along the way. If you want to get the episode highlights directly in your email, then head to theleapcast.com right now to subscribe. All right, everybody, welcome to Leapcast. I'm your host, Dr. George James. I am excited once again, to bring another friend, amazing person, Leon Ford. He has done, so much with his life. He's gone through a lot, but even more so, he's done a lot, even beyond what he's gone through. He's a speaker, he's an activist, he's just an awesome person, author, and foundation runner, which we'll talk more about that. Leon, thanks for joining me for a Leapcast, man.
Man, thanks for having me. We've been talking about this before you even started the podcast.
Yeah, man. I think you might have been like my first official podcast guest before I had a podcast.
Yeah, man. So I'm excited to see that, it's up and moving and you're inspiring people, educating people, and just giving out really good information, bro. So
thanks, man. That's my goal. And I'm really honored to have you here. And one of the ways that we like to start is called talking about your leap story. So really talking about your early days, talking about it, maybe childhood, maybe family, and especially into your story. I think for the audience, it would be really great for them to hear your story. And then we'll talk about the journey you've been on since. So tell us your story, man. What's your leap story?
My leap story, I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I come from a very, very loving family. I think coming from a solid family structure is directly connected to my resilience, my confidence, my tenacity, my ambition. Just having a loving mother who has always been supportive. I've never been told what I couldn't do, right? Having a loving and protecting father who, he's an alpha male, right? I always felt safe around my father. Always felt loved. I always felt supported. I always felt respected. Neither one of my parents ever screamed down on me. They always made me feel like I mattered. Like they respected me, and I feel like, sometimes parents don't acknowledge the child's space, and my parents did, and they created an environment for me to thrive. And I say that, because a lot of people see me and they're like, how are you still happy? How are you still right? And so
and I've met your parents. I mean, individually I've met them, and they are what you say they are. Your mom brings it and your dad brings it in different ways. They're good people. So shout out to your parents, man.
Oh man, thank you. And so fast forward, we experienced some adversity as a family. The loss of my baby sister when I was 13 years old. She was 10 years old. And I feel like that brought us, even closer.
Yeah.
I talk to both of my parents every single day.
Nice.
Every time we hang up the phone, it's I love you. Like there's never a time where we don't say I love you before we hang up the phone. So losing my sister was tough. It definitely made us closer. And then fast forward to when I was 19 years old, I was shot 5 times by a Pittsburgh police officer and lost my ability to walk. That was it was tough. For me, losing my sister was tougher. it was a bigger loss
What makes you say
than
that? Like,
being.
why do you feel like losing your sister? I mean, obviously, like she was important to you. She's a human being. Like, what makes you say that?
Yeah, so I was raised by alpha men, right?
Hmm.
And it's not even, particular to alpha men. When you love someone,
Yeah,
right, you would rather hurt before they hurt.
yeah, 100%.
And losing my little sister was devastating. Me being shot, it was like, okay, I got shot, but as long as my family's safe, I'm
Hmm.
good.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And losing my little sister, it was just like, I wish I was able to do more. I wish, you know, um, I was there to protect her and I wasn't. So that
And
was really tough.
I can only imagine, what you had to go through. But just from what you just shared, you're saying from 13 to 19 in a 6 year span, you lost your sister, and then you were shot in this traumatic way, which then resulted in the loss of your ability to walk. And of course, there's other things that happen in your life, but like that's a tough 6 year span.
What was deep is I never even framed it that way. I didn't even realize that was only 6 years.
Yeah.
Um, wow. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, been through a lot, you know what I mean? And yeah, I woke up in the hospital and dealing with the fact that was shot and I was also charged, and so I
Wait,
dealt
wait,
with a
wait, wait,
lot
wait.
of.
I mean, I've heard this, but I'm always baffled by this. You were shot and
I was
charged?
shot and charged. Yes, several. My arraignment was in the hospital bed while I had like tubes in my mouth, and it was a very frustrating and confusing time for me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I knew that I didn't want to go to prison, and so on one hand, I was trying to recover, right? I mean, it took me several months to even get out of the ICU, right? Um, and I would believe I was in the hospital for about 6 months. So I'm trying to recover,
Mm.
but now I have this case. And I never made it a race thing, right? However, I'm laying in the hospital bed and I went online to see, the articles about me.
Hmm.
And the media framed it. Black teen shot by white officer.
Well,
And so, I read the article and I began reading the comments. And if you know anything,
them
you
comments.
should don't read the comments,
Don't read the
right?
comments. If
Um,
anything, never read the comments. They're horrible.
they were, yeah, attacking me, my family. Some of the most racist comments that you could think of. Um, and so that is what really fueled my hatred toward white people.
Mm.
I hated all white people at that time,
Wow.
no exceptions.
Mm. If you white, you getting hate.
Yeah, and thinking about me getting shot, this uh how the media framed the headline,
Mm.
black teen shot by white officer, and these comments, oh man, it just it
Yeah,
added
it fuels
fuel
it.
to the fire.
Yeah.
I began watching these videos on YouTube of like super black nationalist groups. I would watch a lot of Khalid Muhammad,
Yeah.
and he was in the nation, and he is probably, from my perspective, one of the most charismatic speakers
Yeah.
that I've heard.
Mm.
Right, and he was able to frame the black experience with a lot of anger that
Mhm.
met me right where I was,
Yeah. Now, was it
and
still while you were in the hospital? We're trying to recover.
while I was in the hospital, yeah, I'm in the hospital, and I'm watching all these videos,
Wow.
and it seemed like every video I was watching,
It was hitting you
it,
right where you
it,
was.
it made me more angry. I was I was a ball of fire, bro. You know what I mean? Especially when they're using historical references.
Yeah. Yeah. They're using
That
facts.
facts, bro.
Yeah.
And so these are angry people using facts
Yeah.
to express themselves. And I was angry.
Yeah.
And I'm learning more about these facts. And it's making me hate white people even more.
Mm. I mean, there's something
So
about like what we do when we're in pain and what we fill ourselves with. I mean, what you're saying right now to me is just so powerful. Like when we're in trauma, when we're in pain, when we're in recovery, we could fill ourselves with hatred, with like negativity, with awful thinking, with bad people. I mean, even down to like bad food and bad habits, right? Like all that stuff, we just consume it because it's just so much pain and hurt there. And you were, because in all of this, I'm like, I'm wondering, is anybody like getting your story or is asking you how you're doing? Or just checking in on you? Like, were you getting any of that?
I was, but I wasn't receptive
Okay.
because my mom and my grandma, they coming, they loving on me, they bringing me food,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's certain friends that I wanted to be there,
Yeah.
and they ain't showing up.
Yeah.
So that's making me feel left out. And I'm going on
Your
Instagram and
day
they're
ones, like some of those folks that you thought would always be there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, man, they're partying, they're having a good time, and I realized, like, dang, their lives moved on, and my life stopped.
Yeah.
So it made me even more frustrated,
Of course.
you
Just
know.
just stuffing
And so,
more anger, more hatred, just stuffing.
yeah, just listen, I was just full, and so it was hard for the love
Yeah.
of my family to even penetrate my heart because I wanted to be angry.
Wow.
I didn't want to live. I was mad at God. Like, why did she even let me live if I couldn't walk?
Yeah.
I remember being angry at my mom because she told me, she prayed and she said, I don't care what my son look like. I don't care how I gotta have him. I just want him here. And
I'm
I'm like,
smiling.
man, you could have prayed. I'm like, you could have prayed for my legs.
Right.
You
Lord
could have
healing his
said,
legs.
you know what I mean? She's like, I don't care what my son is like. As long as he here, I'm good. As long as he survives.
Man, I'm laughing
Yes,
because that is such a mama prayer. Like, Lord, just make my baby, just make my baby stay alive. That's all I care about.
that's all she cared about. And I survived. So I was angry for even surviving.
Mm,
You know what I mean? What is like how am I going to live my life? How can I add value to the world? How can I make my parents proud? I thought these things were impossible.
mm,
And so yeah, I wanted to be in that dark spot. I wanted to watch those videos. I wanted to retaliate. Um, and honestly, a few things happened that helped me shift my perspective. The first thing was my son.
mm.
He was born while I was in the hospital.
Wow.
I was I think it was the seventh. It was on the fourth floor. So I got to go down. They rolled me down, to
Were you
hold
able to
him and
be there
stuff.
while he was being born?
No, so we were in the room, but she had to get a emergency C-section,
Okay.
and so they had to take her into another room, and yeah, so I couldn't actually be in the same room. But I was in the next room, and they immediately brought him out. Um, and I began to think, wow, like I want to live for him.
Yeah.
Like I want to be a part of his life. And what is that going to look like for me? What does living look like?
Yeah. Especially
Do
with
I
all
want to
that hate
live
and all that negativity.
Do I want to live with that?
Yeah.
how would my quality of life be if I lived with that, right? Other thing is my nurses,
Mm.
you know, they were phenomenal. And
Wow.
most of them were white.
Okay.
So
Oh
I was
man,
like, well, I hate all white people but y'all.
right. Every other white people, right? But not you. I
Right?
mean, that is, I could only imagine. Like you're filled with hate, and on some level, rightfully so, because something horrible and traumatic was done to you. It's natural to feel that, right? So anybody going through stuff, like it's natural that we feel these types of feelings. But at the same time, when you make this whole blanket statement, like all people deserve that hate, that's tough. And especially when they're right there loving on you, seeing you, helping you. Yeah, I could imagine that
Wiping
must
your
have.
butt, bro. Wiping your butt.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm in the hospital, bro. Like they were like
You can't do
washing me
nothing.
up,
Yeah.
bro. It was I could barely get out the bed. I couldn't get out the bed by myself. So they had like a this lift to lift me up. They had to roll me to one side and roll me to the other and strap me in. It was a lot. They took
Yeah.
care of me. These were great people.
Yeah.
I mean, phenomenal people. And then when I had a bad day and I start cussing them out, they just listened, heard me out, and they still took care of me.
Yeah.
Good care of me.
I mean, look, I get that. Like when my dad was in a bad car accident when I was in college and ICU the whole nine, came home and my mom like took care of him. Same thing, like like cleaned him, right? All of that stuff. Like made sure he was good. And I remember him saying, like, look, I've always loved your mom, but the way she took care of me made me love her so much deeper. Right? There's something about somebody taking care of you that is hard to like to hate when that love and care is just coming at you day in and day out.
Yeah, and they did their jobs with so much love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that kind of softened my heart a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And then my sixth grade teacher, right? My sixth grade teacher, her name was Miss Shank. She came to visit me, and Miss Shank had a profound impact on my life
Yeah.
because I had her class in the sixth grade, but all through middle school, she was just like my mom in the school, right? Just always looked out for me, made
Yeah.
sure my grades was right, just whatever I needed, she was there.
So shout out
And
to the nurses and shout out to Miss Shank.
Miss Shank,
Yep.
yeah.
Hey, I have one of
And
those. That was Mrs. Jackson for me, so I understand that. So go ahead.
yeah, she was awesome. And when my sister passed away, she really stepped up because my grades started to drop.
Um,
School became a place to have fun because there was so much grief at home. And Miss Shank would bring me McDonald's and Wendy's for lunch.
yeah.
And when you get McDonald's and
Yeah.
Wendy's for lunch in middle school, that's like
You
going to
live
a
it.
five. Oh, and she would help me with my work. You know what I mean? And
Nice.
really, really love. So I never forgot her.
Yeah.
And when she showed up, it was like I hate all white people, but these nurses and hey,
Got too many exceptions now. It's too many. Like,
right?
man, fine. I don't hate all white people no more.
Yeah, and then my heart began to soften up, and I had these relationships, and they really made me helped me to become more receptive to that love. And then I watched a short interview, about Bob Proctor, and
Oh, Bob
he
Proctor.
quoted,
Oh man, I that's so crazy. I learned about Bob Proctor like maybe about a year or so ago, and he just recently passed. Yeah,
yeah,
he's a deep dude. But go ahead.
he was the man. So he's quoting um, Think and Grow Rich,
Yeah,
obviously. Um, he's he's quoting the a book about the subconscious mind.
yeah.
Uh, and there was another book he was quoting, and like I began reading those books,
Okay.
and I began to really think about how I wanted to live my life. Let me find the name of the this other book. Psycho Cybernetics.
Yes, that is one of the books he always talks about. That's right.
Bruh. Cybernetics. So I began to think about like how do I want to create myself and create my future. Because if you listen to Bob Proctor, he's very empowering. He's
Yeah.
all about accountability.
Hmm.
Like he was like a man's man, where he's like, look, you got to do it.
Yeah.
You understand? And you could, if you could visualize it, you could make it happen. And I began to visualize this person that I wanted to become, even though I wasn't that person.
Another one of my guests and a best friend from throughout my life and through from college, BJ Johnson was on, and he's the one that introduced me to Bob Proctor, and the thought of like pushing yourself, like what is it that you really believe, and go even beyond that. What is it that you're here for, right? Like and then be intentional about it. So like I can imagine as your heart is softening and you're having this love and care and you're having people show up for you, and then now you get to hear someone who's now trying to push you to be even beyond, and you're like, yo dude, I can't even walk right now. Like I'm working through a case right now. I can only imagine what was going through your heart and mind during that time.
Yeah, so you have Bob Proctor, you have my heart softening up, then you have my parents just creating this environment that they always created,
Yeah.
just protecting me,
Yeah.
right? And just like looking out for me. And also my grandfather, I always tell this story. I was depressed and my grandfather called my dad, and my dad's just, he was drained. He didn't know at this point what to say or do. And he was so hurt, himself. And so my dad put me on the phone with my grandfather who lives in Massachusetts. And my grandfather, is an old wise guy. And he says, hey, I understand your life is shit right now.
Mm.
You're experiencing the worst moment of your life. And the thing is, he said, you got to remember that you cannot fall off the floor,
Mm.
right?
That's deep.
It's impossible,
You can't
right?
fall off the floor.
Can't fall off the floor. And he said, it's up to you to get up. I cannot get up for you,
Mm.
right? I can encourage you, but you have to pull yourself up off the floor. And how high you decide to climb is up to you. And I decided to pull myself up off the floor,
Wow.
and I'm still climbing. I haven't hit my peak yet. I'm still climbing. And that was the shift for me, really.
Wow, man, yo, that is so powerful. Like everything that you're saying, and I think that that also says a lot about you, right? Because in the work I do and helping people, uh, things happen. People have been through trauma, been through heartache and pain, injustice, wrong things happen to them that shouldn't never have happened to them, and it's hard to let the light in. It's hard to soften your heart. It's hard to see the signs. I mean, what you're saying is like you, even though you were filled with the negativity and everything else, and you were consuming it, you started to let the light in. You started to see the signs, which says a lot about you and your willingness to say, I don't want to be at this space. I want to be in a different place. And I think that's a lot to deal with you and your ability to take in what was there in that moment.
Yeah, you know what? I knew I wanted to be happy, and I didn't know how I was going to get there. And so it was also a dance, though, right? It was like straight, you know, fuel to the fire content, right? That's content that made me so angry fully.
Mm.
And then I was got a little taste of like Bob Proctor and Eckhart Tolle and start reading like
Yeah.
the Apollo Coelho and start reading some Miguel Ruiz, the Four Agreements and the Mastery of Love and the Mastery of Self.
Awesome.
But then
Man, you
I
need your
would
own
swing
book
back.
list, man. You dropping like a whole bunch of gems right now. That's awesome.
Yo, but it was a dance. Like
Yeah.
I remember watching Bob Proctor, right, or Earl Nightingale, and then like just being fired up because I found he got the George Jackson. He
Mhm.
got the book Blood in My Eye or Soul Dead Brother, and I found him, and I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? And I'm going in, and these are people who I still appreciate. You know what I mean? I'm not saying like I got to this other side and
Yeah.
then I threw those folks away. But I was able to channel. I was able to identify with their pain. As I evolved and matured, I was able to identify with their pain and their struggle,
Nice.
and kind of use that energy to fuel my love, right? To encourage my healing, because I seen the results of like I was inspired by George Jackson, but then he ended up dying in jail,
Okay. Yeah.
right? He was a revolutionary, but he lost his life. And I said, man, I got this son.
Yeah.
I need my life. And I think a lot of times we put these martyrs up on a pedestal. And I always ask, and I was, in therapy one day, I inquired with my therapist and said, do you think they would say it was worth it? Them losing their lives. Right. And I think about, Malcolm X and what happened to his family,
Mhm.
after his death,
Yeah.
with, I think his grandson murdered, his wife or something. He accidentally burnt the house down. Right. There was a lot of things that
Yeah.
happened with the family
Yeah.
because he wasn't there. And I think we put them up on a pedestal and say they died for us. Now they was murdered
Mhm.
for one. And I believe they would have chose to live to become old men, right?
A
And
hundred
to share
percent.
their wisdom.
I mean, what you're
Yeah,
saying, like I really appreciate how you're saying like this dance, right? And I think that's all of us, right? We don't have to be shot and charged and in recovery to recognize that sometimes we're filled with hate or filled with negativity, and how much are we making room for the light? How much are we in the dance? How much are we like feeding ourselves, reading, listening to things that will even challenge that negativity? Some people wouldn't even do that. And I think like that dance is so precious and necessary. And then like the start of like a will to live, right? Like, I think that everything that you've been through is just, lots of people would say, I can't believe that, right? But it was your will to live for your son, for your family, for yourself, for the future of saying, I want to be an old man. And there's something about being an old head, right? There's something about being able to be the person to impart wisdom or just be there for others. And I think they probably would have wanted that opportunity to see even some of what they fought for.
yeah. I mean, and I would say this. There's a difference between being an old head and an old man,
True.
right? And especially in Black culture,
Yeah.
you could be a 25-year-old and be an old head to
Right.
somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I want to be an old man,
Yeah.
right? And there's certain choices that I have to make, right? To keep myself healthy,
Yeah.
mentally, spiritually, physically, and emotionally, so I could, strive to become an old man.
I love that.
Now, if I would have let that anger consume me, even if I would have let it consume me enough to act out, do an act of violence, then that could have killed me, right? Or put me inside of a prison where I don't have the best health care and so on and so forth, and I
Mhm.
could have died that way. Or I could have let it fester inside of me. You feel me? I could have let it fester, the anger fester inside of me, give me high blood pressure, triggered. I could have been triggered every day because
Yeah.
I see police cars every day,
Yeah.
you know. Um, or I could make a conscious decision to let it go.
I,
And I
what you're saying about the difference between an old head and an old man, I love it, right? Like conscious decisions, conscious choices that I want to be an old man. I want to be someone that is here for a long time And so what am I doing? Like you said, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, how am I taking care of those things? And you mentioned it quickly, but I know that was a significant part of your journey, therapy, right? Like
And
how did that even get added to it? Because once again, certain neighborhoods, certain communities, lots, certain trauma, we don't always think about therapy. How did that get added onto this softening of your heart, this feeding yourself with positivity, believing in possibilities? How did that get there?
yeah, so I began to post on social media a lot. And I would write these motivational quotes and these posts because I was listening to motivational speakers all day.
Yeah,
Les Brown, you know what I mean? Like Les Brown, Eric Thomas. Like I'm listening to all these people, reading all of these amazing books. And so my language began to change. As my language began to change, the content that I was posting on social media became more inspiring. So now people began to view me as the inspiration
yeah.
when I wasn't even that person yet.
Mm-hmm.
I was right. I was actually writing what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
So when people thought I was writing for them to motivate them, I
Yeah.
was actually writing to myself.
I mean,
So when
that
I
goes
was
back to
saying,
Bob Proctor, right? Like being able to see or
hey,
envision the future and go after it on some level.
go after it. So I began to create this image of who I wanted to become, even though I wasn't that person fully.
Yeah.
I had it in my heart, I had it in my mind. And I would put it out there, and people began to see me as that person. So I began to show up as that person. Well, if you talk about healing and if you talk about community and stuff, well, as I was talking about those things, healing began to pop up.
Mm.
And I began to talk about healing for years, actually,
Wow.
before I actually began to heal. So on the outside, it looked like I was healing,
Mm-hmm.
but I was just talking about it. I wasn't doing the work.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where talking about healing, talking about being an inspiration, it got to a point where that those doing those things didn't fuel me the same way, right? It wasn't sustainable. So I felt like an inspiration on the outside, and people viewed me as an inspiration, but I also felt like I was dying on the inside,
Yeah.
right? In my book, I talk about how so many people was focused on my hero, but they forgot my healing.
Yeah.
So I also forgot my healing,
Yeah. And
and
we
I
can
got
get
to a
caught
point.
up in that too, right? Like, so many people want to tell the story, want to post the story, and like I fall into that too, right? We all want to capture to share to somebody else, but are we in the moment, right? Are we even paying attention to ourselves and our experiences, and for you to be able to acknowledge, right, that you were inspiring people, even trying to be this inspiration, but on the inside, there was a lot more work that needed to be done.
Yeah, and so got to a point where I had to make a decision,
Yeah.
right? I had to make a choice to heal, and that's when I decided to go to therapy. And I would say that at some point, and I think it was, maybe sometime after the conversation with my grandfather, where I had to make a choice to get up off the floor, I realized that I had a choice. And every choice that I made every day would either bring me closer to happiness,
Mm-hmm.
living life, right? Equanimity, or bring me closer to anger, frustration, miserableness, right?
Yeah.
Um, and even death.
Yeah. It's
And
this
when I,
continuum. It's a continuum, right? And you said this earlier. Sometimes people don't recognize how our emotional well-being impacts our physical health, high blood pressure, all that stuff, and early death, right? Or even lack of quality of life, right? No matter what your situations. I mean, like you've been through we talked about that 6 year span, loss, heartache, pain, trauma, and you're picking yourself up off the floor. You're making a choice daily. You're actively choosing healing when so many others don't realize that they have that same power.
Exactly. And it's like how we choose to cope.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, at some point, we were babies and we could use a binky for a coping mechanism to
Yeah.
relax us, right? But then it got to a point where the binky didn't work anymore, right? And so, being that inspiration and using social media, that was my binky,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it got to a point where that did not work anymore. I realized I was unhappy on the inside and I had this desire again to be happy. And so what I thought, what is the healthiest way for me to heal, right? To and to sustain my happiness. And I also have good, my aunt, mentor, Amber Sloan, she's an activist here in Pittsburgh. And, she was like, yeah, I go to therapy. You should check it out. You know what I mean? And, she gave me her therapist number. And, then one of my mentees that I was mentoring, he was like, yeah, I go too. And I'm like, oh, snaps. Like, let me go check it out, and I made that appointment and,
I think that's what therapy. That's what can happen with therapy, man. Like, you start hearing people talk about it, talk about mental health, anxiety, stress. I'm like, yo, you talking about it? You talking about it? Like, and I remember, like, when you and I first met, how we even got into some of those conversations, and how, you know, it now becomes like, now, there's a therapist here, like, I'm talking about this stuff, and it's like it all becomes, like you said, you're moving the needle, where like you move from the anger and negativity to the positivity and dreaming, to healing and inspiration, to then therapy, and now it's all around you, all these different signs. And
man,
consistently, you have been willing to follow the signs. It sounds like you just didn't ignore the signs, which allowed you to keep moving forward.
absolutely. And one of my favorite books is The Alchemist, and Paulo Coelho talks about the good omens,
Mm,
right? And how those signs are good omens that keeps you on your path,
yeah,
keeps you in alignment. And as long as you take one step a day, you'll get there. You don't have to, don't worry about 10 steps ahead or 20 steps
yeah.
ahead. You just make the choice. One choice to wake up, think about how can I take care of myself? And then how can I add value to the world? And, with those steps, I met good people like you, right, along my journey, who really sowed seeds into me, that,
It's been
put me
mutual,
along.
man.
Yeah,
I don't leave any conversation with you without feeling charged and energized, just like I am today, man. So it's been mutual.
nah, I appreciate it.
I really am grateful for all that you're sharing and all that you've been through, and I know that there's so much more, and there's a parts that hopefully we might get to. I'm even wearing this shirt today, because of your activism, right? Because of your presence, but how you've done it differently, right? You have not been, I'm a black man shot by a white police, like, let me like hate all white people. You found a different way to be an activist and to highlight injustice, but also show love and care. And I imagine that's part of some of the stuff that you're doing now. And so I'm curious, what are you doing now? And can you even talk about how you've integrated your way of being an activist?
Yeah. So let me back up and say I learned a lot about power from my dad, right? And how to be efficient, how to get what you want, um, the best way, right? Like efficiency was very important in my household. And so when you tie in, my mom's love, my dad's love, but really his protection,
Yeah.
right? My mom's very sweet and kind. My dad and forgiving. My dad's very unforgiving, right? So it was like the balance of those two personalities,
Yeah.
along with, the inspiration from the Les Browns and Eric Thomases and Bob Proctors and all the books I read, a theme factor in therapy.
Yeah.
So all these different tools, right, gave me, an understanding of how I wanted to lead, right? So it was more than like I lead with love, but it's actually more than leading with love, right? It's leading with love to be efficient,
Mm.
right? And so therapy helped me to be more objective in
Okay.
my leadership.
Nice.
When before therapy, I was so hurt. So everything was about me. This is how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I care about. And this is what I want, right? I want my voice heard.
Yeah.
After going to therapy, I became more objective. So I could see, I learned to view other people's perspective,
Nice.
right? So in therapy, right, you might have a disagreement with, your brother,
Mm-hmm.
and you're talking through it, and your therapist will help you see yourself and what you may have done wrong, right? And help you see your brother's perspective, and you realize, like, oh, snaps, like, I did kind of add to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that mirror that's like, accountability. It doesn't take away accountability from the other person,
Right.
but you're able to see yourself, even if you said, dang, I should never even went over there that day.
Mm-hmm. I could have
Because I
done that
already
better. I could have said that better. They was not cool
felt
for what they did, but I still had some part in it.
exactly.
Yeah.
So being therapy helped me to, process things differently. And so I began to think about one, there are over 18,000 police departments in America, and they are all governed differently. They all got a different budget, different policies and procedures, right? So when someone says, hey, everybody in the United States, go protest downtown, from my perspective, that is making an assumption that those people in different communities don't have the social capital, right, to get it done. Like, what do you want, and what phone call can I make without people having to call off work, right? Without people getting locked up from standing in the streets, because we're at a point now where when I got shot 10 years ago, you know awareness wasn't really a thing. People assume like, yo, this doesn't really happen, or if it did happen, what did you do?
Yeah.
Now public opinion has shifted
Mm-hmm.
dramatically, right? To the point where a lot of people, and I would say most people, probably say, what did the officer do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we're now in the era where we have social capital, right? Certain people have social capital, and they can make a phone call to get something done. So I said, instead of being this national activist, how about I focus on my city in the police department in Pittsburgh? What can I do?
Yeah.
Right? What relationships can I, have? And again, those good omens. So I didn't intentionally say, let me work with the police chief. I actually went on a rant on Twitter and called him racist and said he didn't care about black people and so on and so forth. And a friend that I met, right, who's an attorney, really powerful. She, said, have you ever met Chief Schubert?
Mm.
I had never met him.
Wow.
And I saw him on TV. He wasn't the chief when I was shot, right? We had two different chiefs before him, right? Nah. So she set it up. We met. First meeting was, we both a little standoffish, but we respect her. So, we talk. We meet for lunch, then we have dinner at her house, and eventually we become friends.
Mm.
And he began to tell me about why he became a police officer and different experiences, and I shared my experiences. And I realized, dang, he really got a good heart.
Yeah. I mean,
right? And
I
he's
mean,
just the face.
I know
He's the face.
I know there's more to that, but I just want to highlight how that's so powerful where there are moments where the negativity will still come up even after or even while we're on our journey. It's not
Yeah.
like it disappeared all the way.
Oh,
It'll come out, and sometimes that's how we act out sometimes, or how sometimes
yeah.
we'll do things that he's like, oh man, that was a bad look, I shouldn't have done that, right? Because it's still there, we get triggered. And it sounds like you got triggered in that moment, you went off, you didn't necessarily look at all the facts because you were feeling something, because maybe one of the chiefs was racist, but maybe not that one, right? But then
Yeah.
now, once again, you allow yourself to follow the signs, and now you're building relationship with someone. And so go ahead. I mean, I just think that we don't often do that. We sometimes we just act out and that's it. But you were willing to hear, hey, have you met him? All right, I'm willing, and see what happens.
Gotta be willing.
Yeah,
You gotta be open minded. Because some of the things he said from his perspective, it's kind of like, oh, a little stung a little bit. You know what I mean? But then as I began to understand his story and appreciate him as a person, as a human being, yeah, I'm like, yo, he's a good guy. You know what I mean? And we became friends. And yo, I mean, we started a foundation together,
wow.
and
You and the
we're
chief?
working. Yeah, me and the chief. He's my co-founder.
Wow,
Yeah, and so we both care about mental health.
wow.
That's one of our pillars. We both care about workforce development. That's one of our pillars. We both care about gun violence. That's one of our pillars. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't care, if he's not that guy, but if he had a blue line flag or whatever, I'm able to see past all that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? He doesn't, but even if he did,
yeah.
he cares about what I care about, and we're able to collaborate on things that we both care about.
I love
Sure.
how you, I mean, there's, and I know that there's another part of this, but you went from being shot by a police officer, a white police officer, to going through your journey to now starting a foundation with the chief of police. That's crazy.
Yeah.
We don't often hear it that way, right? We don't hear that the same system or groups of people who created the trauma, that you find good people in the system and collaborate with them.
Listen, collaboration has been more efficient
Yeah,
than any of the activism I've done before this.
yeah,
Like, I mean, I just last Thursday, I went to a high school with a sergeant here in Pittsburgh, and the sergeant goes every other week to the high school to speak. And there was a couple young people that they're trying to get to, but they're having a tough time because they don't really speak the language, and these young people have experienced some severe trauma. And I went, and the power of those youth seeing me
yeah,
and then seeing these officers in the same space, me being raw about my story, the officers really having, compassion for what I've been through. You know what I mean? And we were able to
to
work
dance again.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's that dance. And there was one little guy. He was the hardest little kid. He was the hardest in the room, and he was the leader.
yeah,
And he like, I don't give a fuck about that.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Or I'm gonna get licked back. The opposites are talking. You know how young people
yeah,
talk.
yeah, yeah.
I was talking to them about retaliation and things, and by the end of the class, yeah, he was literally crying on my
Of
shoulder.
course. Because
And
at
the
the heart
teacher
of
was,
it, so many of us in general are in pain, are in dealing with trauma and our own mental health challenges, and that's not often being spoken to, right? But that's what you are doing, and like you said, collaboration is like, it's seeing reconciliation, it's seeing love, it's seeing care in action. It's like, yo, I didn't believe that was possible.
yeah, man. And another thing, seeing a therapist has really helped me become more self-aware,
Yeah.
right? And it has also given me the language, right, to help other people unpack things through our conversations. It'd be a normal conversation,
Yeah.
but because I'm in therapy, right, I have language and questions to dive deeper beneath the surface, and it helps me with relationship building,
Wow.
right? Even with someone like the chief, who I had a lot of differences with, right? But I got to hear his story, hear his perspective, and then come up with some solutions, right? Because it's easy to just say, F the police, F the chief, F the mayor, F, whomever,
Mm-hmm.
and just, but if I'm doing this to make, the world safer for my son, right? What is going on social media, posting, what is that going to do to make my son safe? Because I know that one day my son's going to be 16 years old, driving a nice car, and he's potentially going to get pulled over,
Right. Right. And could be
right? So if
seen
I'm
as a threat, could be whatever. But if you are collaborating, working together, changing policies, maybe changing mindsets, that's different. So tell me,
changing mindsets and building relationships,
yeah,
because he knows a lot of these officers,
yeah,
right? Like he knows them, right? Again, it's hyper local.
yeah,
We should know our police officers. We should know all of our teachers. We should know all of our elected officials. We should know every person doing business in our community. We should know all of our neighbors and their children and what school they go to. Community.
yeah.
And we live in neighborhoods now. We don't live in communities.
Hmm.
Dick Gregory always talked about that, right?
And it makes
Like,
the stories real, right? You're a real person, not just some random person. With what you're
exactly.
saying, I'm curious. As you know, look. You and I could talk for like another 3 hours, but I'm gonna try to start to wrap it up. But I'm wondering, what is the name of the foundation, and where could people find out more information about it?
Yeah, so the foundation is called the Hear Foundation, like I hear you,
Okay.
right? And I don't know the website, man. Yeah, I don't know
That's
that.
all
I
right.
have an executive. I have it. I
Hey, if
have an
they look up
executive.
Leon Ford, they're gonna find the foundation, right? So that's all good, and
Right.
we will have
All
it
you got to
in the. It will be in the show notes with the link, and people will be able to find it. So all of that will be good.
perfect. Yeah, if you Google Hear Foundation Pittsburgh, I'm for sure it'll pop up. And one of my goals, like I said, there are over 18,000 police departments in America, and they are all governed differently. I'm helping to uh, lead a tour called the Heal America Tour, which was
Nice.
started by my mentor, Bishop Omar, who actually passed away last year. And he was just a phenomenal man and really instilled a lot inside of me. But we were going to different cities having this Heal America tour, right? Where we would have these panel discussions with police officers, activists, you know, athletes, entertainers, philanthropists. And when he passed away, we were thinking about, what can, Hell America 2.0 look like? So as a part of my vision, I'm working with, Hill America and the Hill America platform to go around to different cities. And
Nice.
as we're going around to these different cities, having these panel discussions and doing these events and, funding different initiatives, my vision is to build with the police officers in the community, the activists, the community leaders, the philanthropic community, the corporate folks, the business leaders, the educators, and to help them start up their own foundations on that. And they can pick their own pillars, they pick their
Yeah.
own board members, but I'm gonna get the conversation started and show
Nice.
them, and use the template that we used in Pittsburgh
And once
to
again,
help them.
it helps you to move change forward, right? For other people, other communities. future generations. And once again, I think like all that you're doing is powerful. Um, I'm curious. Some questions I like to ask people before we end. Who would
Yeah.
you want to work with or collab with, as we've been talking about collaboration? If you could think about anybody, who would you like to work with or collaborate with?
Mm. I would love. Hmm, that's a really tough question.
And I know you've probably worked with lots of people and already collabed with lots of people, but I think with all that you're doing, I'm wondering who would be on your list.
I mean, there are so many individuals. I don't want to name people I already work with though.
That's all right. Well, maybe we'll start there.
I mean,
Maybe you want
I'm
to continue that work.
yeah, I am really inspired by President Obama and the Mad Brothers Keeper Alliance. I believe that they are doing really great work. I participated on a panel with him and Senator John Lewis, um, Darrell Moore,
I
Darnell Moore,
know.
sorry.
Yep, I
Um,
remember that one. I actually don't Darnell. I need to get him on the podcast.
yeah, he's dope. Laquan Muhammad was on that panel, Brian Stevenson. I facilitated a panel like 2 months ago with Shaka Senghor, Pat
Yeah.
Pooh, a woman she was a psychotherapist from Michigan. I believe her name was Shawnee Saxon. She was amazing.
Wow.
She blew me away. Just, I have to follow up with her now. I'm thinking about it.
Oh, good.
Um, yeah, I would really. I'm a huge Kanye West fan,
Okay.
and I would really love to have a conversation with Kanye West.
I could see that.
Um, yeah,
I think it would be dope. I
Charlotte.
mean, I could see you having that conversation, and there'd probably be a lot of powerful things that would come out of that.
Yeah, and I don't think. I think it'll be a conversation that he hasn't had,
Yeah.
um, because I just want to vibe. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's so much, that we have in common, um, to discuss. Where I think I could pull some things out and pour some things into him that can really add value to what he's trying to do in the world.
Look, I totally see.
Charlemagne,
Go ahead. Sorry, you were saying
uh,
Charlemagne.
yeah, Charlemagne too is another one that I really appreciate. That I would love to work with. Oprah Winfrey, she's amazing. Um,
Those are all
yeah,
good people on your list, and when you talk about Charlemagne, when you talk about Kanye, I could see, especially with the things that you're sharing in your journey and their journey, I think that would be really interesting. Uh, Two things I often like to ask people near the end is, and you've been already saying this, but I'm curious still to hear, what would you say mental wellness means to you?
mental wellness is, well, does it mean to me? Um, I would say it means a lot to me. Mental wellness for me is a holistic approach to life,
Yeah.
right? Mental wellness is, a lifestyle, right? It's like you don't go to a therapy and just say, I'm healed, right? It's a process. And mental wellness isn't just about therapy. Mental wellness is about also working out. What are you listening to? What are you watching? What
Yeah.
are you eating? Right? Who do you have in your life that's pouring into you? Right? It's a holistic approach, um, to maintain a good quality of life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And the last question I ask is, what mental wellness advice would you give to your younger self? And that could be as early as yesterday or any time in the past.
Yeah, I would tell, my younger self, I would tell myself now that it is okay. Just be you, do your best, and even sometimes your best ain't good enough for the world, but that ain't got nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
As long as you show up, that,
Yeah.
and do your best. That's it. You know what I mean? And take your time. Take your time, be patient, breathe,
Yeah.
breathe, be present, enjoy every moment. And even those moments that are difficult, that are hard to enjoy, just feel them because they are valuable as well. There's some moments that, when I think about when I was in the hospital, that I wish I felt a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
because now I'm out of it and I try to go
Yeah.
back to really pull wisdom. It's hard because I try my best to skip over those moments.
Yeah. I
Right?
mean, that's interesting
So
even saying that. Like the thought of like sometimes we're moving so fast, trying to get ahead or away from something, but we could still miss if we allowed ourselves to just be more present. And I really like your thought of just slowing down and being okay with who you are and just breathing, right? How important that is. Leon, you are amazing, dynamic, powerful, but just your continuous growth and looking for the good omens, looking for the good signs, and how that has brought you on a journey of healing, and what you're doing for so many others is just incredible. And I know that the foundations out there, and the Here Foundation, want people to check that out and support. And I know you got a book, right? It's going to be coming out sometime. Maybe you need to come back when the book drops. So when is the book?
the book is scheduled for May 2023.
Oh yeah,
I am Leon Ford, the Phoenix who rises.
I love that. So we're gonna have to have you back. We're gonna talk about the
Coming
book,
back.
everything in the book. Let's do a part two. But Leon, man, I am grateful for our friendship. I'm grateful for who you are, the man that you are, the father you are, the way you show up, the way you lead. I've learned deeply from the things you have shared, and I'm grateful that we just had this moment to chat like we usually do, and and you know this already, but I'll take this time to say, any way that I can be supportive, any way that we could partner, or collaborate, work together, I'm totally down, because the way that you have been an example of healing and recovery and just being on the journey is impressive. And I'm all about trying to support that, support you and the things that you're trying to do. So thank you for joining Leapcast and for being here. And if there's any last words, I'll leave it to you. Any last words you want to say before we close out?
And I just thank you for sharing your platform. I remember, laughing with you on many occasions saying, dang, we should have recorded that conversation.
Yes.
This could have been a podcast, you
Yes.
know? And thank you for just sharing yourself with so many people and for encouraging me to seek therapy. And I remember, when I was inquiring about therapy, you were one of the first people that I reached out to when it was just a thought,
Yeah.
right? And to think back to that day and when I was in Philadelphia, at Rob Wilson's place.
Yeah.
Um, Conversation that we had there, you know, to now, I'm like a completely different person,
Yeah.
and I feel good. And so, I just thank you for that, for encouraging me and inspiring me, and just, for our friendship. So I appreciate you, bro.
Yo, man, thanks, man. That means a lot. And we're all growing, man. And I think some of this is being able to for the listeners, to inspire them to know that they can pick themselves off the floor, that they can find the good omens, and that they can let light in, and that they can transform from wherever you are now to something completely different in a better way. And so I'm grateful for the time, grateful for you being here. And hey, we're going to do this again because, you got a book dropping and all that. And I know there's always good stuff happening. So Leon, thanks for joining me here on Leapcast. And thank you again. Wow, what an incredible ride we just went on with another great member of the Leapcast community. I appreciate you listening and hope you got some tangible value from the episode. Please let us know what you think by leaving a comment, rating, and review. As always, please don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. This is Dr. George James, and I'll see you next time.